and I'm going to go ahead and navigate to page 3 of my document. And I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit so that we can see more of the text that is on this page. Now, you'll notice that in the first column of page 3, we have some text. And whenever you have text that is inside of a frame, InDesign refers to that as a story. And that is a story whether it is all contained in one frame or whether that story spans multiple frames. So even when we start threading this frame, it's still going to be considered one single story. We're just flowing it into multiple different containers. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom, we have a red plus sign. And that red plus sign essentially indicates that we have overset text in this frame. It basically means we have more text than fits in this current frame. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out, zoom in this area, and what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to draw a frame that I want this text to flow into. So I can use the type tool, but to be quite honest, you could use one of the rectangle tools as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag to draw a frame in the second column at about the same height as the first frame. And you'll notice that your smart guides start to kick in to try to help you to generate a frame that is the same height as the first one. Now we're going to switch over to our selection tool. And if you click on this first frame, you'll notice that here's the red plus sign, the overset text indicator. I'm going to click once on that red plus sign. Now you're going to notice, I'm just going to move my cursor over here so we can see this, that our cursor changes to indicate a loaded place cursor. That's basically saying, okay, you want to flow this text from one frame to another, what frame do you want to put it into? Now, because we already have a frame, you'll notice that when I hover over this frame, my cursor changes. So InDesign is saying, hey, I see that there's a frame underneath your cursor. Do you want me to link the two frames together? So I'm just going to go ahead and click right on that frame. And you're going to notice now that the text is flowing from the first frame to the second frame. Now let's take a look at something else. Now that we have two frames that are linked together, if you click on the first frame with your selection tool, you'll notice now that the output contains an arrow pointing to the right. And that's basically saying that the text is being flowed out of this frame. And if you click on the second frame, you'll see another arrow which indicates the text is being flowed into this frame. Hence the term import and output. Now, to better see this, sometimes it's helpful to turn on some indicators that allow us to visually see how text is being flowed. So if we go to our View menu and we come down to Extras, I'm going to turn on this option, Show Text Threads. And when I turn that on, you're going to see that InDesign shows me a little guide or line that is telling me that the text is being flowed from the first frame to the second frame. If I were to click on this and drag it, you'll see that that line always updates to reflect the direction of how the text is being flowed. This is really helpful when you get into more complex pages because sometimes the threading of your text or how it flows is not very obvious. So you can turn on these text threads so we can see how our text is being flowed. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo that to take it back to where it was, but as you can see I still have more overset text. Well, we're just going to continue flowing this text. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this red plus sign again. That's going to give me my loaded cursor. And what I'm now going to do is just go up to my Pages panel and double click on page 4 so that I jump to that page. Now, on this page, I don't have any frames that have already been defined. So when I hover over this area, my cursor is not changing. That's okay, because what we're going to do is instead of clicking to link it to a certain area, we can actually click and drag to draw a frame to the size that we want to generate. And when I let go of my cursor, you can see that the text is now being flowed from page 3, way up here, down here to the first column of page 4. And you'll notice that we have some text wrap applied to this image, which is forcing the text in this column to just wrap around that graphic. But take a look. We still have more overset text. So what I'll do is click on that red plus sign, come over here. I'm just going to click and drag to draw another column. And we will now see that the text is going to flow into that final column. And now we no longer have an overset text indicator, and all of our text is fitting within the frame. Once again, all of this text linked into 4 different frames is composed of one story. So that story is flowing between those 4 frames, and if I change these containers in any way, if I delete one of these frames, watch what happens. The text is automatically flowed into the next linked container. The cool thing about InDesign is that it's very intelligent. So for example, we realize now that I don't have a frame over here. So I don't have to spend a whole lot of time reconfiguring this, because